But see, you never can win when you're dirty, honey. You never can win. It doesn't matter, Phaedra. You did it. You did it. I could have brought Angela Stanton and set her right here because I don't have a dirty...
They say this is a big rich town. I just come from the poorest part.
In part 2 of this series, we discussed the start of Phaedra and Apollo's journey on the Real Housewives of Atlanta. Here's a quick breakdown, but if you want a thorough explanation, go check out part 1 and part 2 of the Love After Lockup series. Apollo and Phaedra met in Atlanta, Georgia in 1995. Phaedra was in her early years of law school and Apollo was in his later years of high school. Phaedra met Angela Stanton in 1999 through her client Drama, a rapper from the Atlanta area. Angela Stanton says Phaedra introduced her to Apollo in 2000. She also alleges that Phaedra and Apollo are partners in crime doing insurance fraud. In 2002, both Angela Stanton and Apollo would be arrested for prior crimes. Angela would only be in jail for 4 months, but Apollo would be held for much longer. By 2003, Angela Stanton has been arrested again. In her book, she says that she participated in a racketeering scheme with Phaedra Parks. Angela acted as the lackey who would do the dirty work, but she alleges Phaedra was the mastermind. In 2004, Apollo officially begins his 4-year federal prison sentence for racketeering. A little later, Phaedra appears on the Being Bobby Brown show. She's growing in popularity in Atlanta, and she's even working with several artists in the industry. In 2005, Angela Stanton has just been released from prison and realizes she's been abandoned by Phaedra, someone she considered a close friend. In May 2009, Apollo is released from federal prison. A few months later, in July, him and Phaedra get engaged, and according to the DOJ, he would start yet another criminal scheme soon after in August 2009 with Gayla St. Julian. In November 2009, Apollo and Phaedra got married. The next time we'd hear from them is when they'd appear on The Real Housewives of Atlanta in Season 3, which aired in October 2010. 2 years later, in 2012, Phaedra was wrapping up Season 5 of The Real Housewives of Atlanta, when Angela Stanton would drop a bombshell memoir in which she accused Phaedra of racketeering, breaking attorney-client privilege several times, and she even takes credit for the head doctor nickname. Season 5 of The Real Housewives of Atlanta would air November 4th, 2012, several months after Angela Stanton released her memoir in March of that year. I highlight that because in Season 5, Nene name-dropped Angela Stanton during the reunion as shown in my intro. At that time, my 14-year-old ass had no idea who she was. I would soon find out after a quick search of her name on YouTube. Most people were introduced to Angela through this video, which is Angela Stanton's promotional interview with Vibe magazine, her book publisher. When asked about her motives for writing the book, this is what she had to say.
She knew she had no intention to help me get out of the situation that she created. Somebody had to be the fall guy for the entire operation, and it just happened to be me. So my book is not about vengeance, it's about justice. It's about telling my story. It's about telling the story of a 5-year-old girl that was sexually abused, who lived in and out on the streets, who ran into somebody that pretended to be a friend, that pretended to be a mentor. You know, I just couldn't understand why she would be so involved with destroying my life, but not interested at all in helping me build it up. And just to kind of sum it up, it's kind of like a football game, if you say. The coach, he stands on the sidelines and he calls all the plays. But the player is the one that actually takes the ball and runs down the field, and he's the one that takes all the hits. Not only does he take all the hits, he brings home the trophy. You can't leave a player injured, land in the middle of the field. The least you can do is send the paramedics in, wrap him up, help him with his wounds, and send him on his way. If he's out the game and he can't play no more, then that's how you handle that. But you don't just leave him injured in the middle of the field.
I will be reading a few excerpts from Angela Stanton's book for you guys, just to paint a clearer picture of her story. I really want you to hear things from the horse's mouth, and keep in mind that these are not my allegations, and that Miss Parks has never been convicted of a crime and vehemently denies any involvement in what Angela Stanton alleges. Also, as I was reading these excerpts, I realized that a few of my dates are off by a year or so. As I come across my errors, I will correct them. However, I'm sure you guys will see I distilled this long-winded story as best as I could. Let's go. up until this point in this chapter, she's been talking about Phaedra. Basically, everybody knew who Phaedra was. Everybody thought she was a very high-powered attorney. She talked about her and Drama's relationship, how basically she was a jump-off, and that she doesn't mind admitting to that because, you know, it was what it was, and Drama wasn't the only man that she was dating either. She starts by saying, I wasn't really concerned about being in a relationship with anyone at that time. After meeting Phaedra Parks, she and I hit it off from the start for some reason. I would often wonder what kind of synergy or energy bonded us together like glue. Whatever it was a strong connection. Phaedra was like my big sister and helped to shape me into the person I grew into being. She had the answer to everything. I was a girl who had been in and out of trouble my entire life. Being from a broken home, I was also silently suffering from being a victim of childhood sexual abuse. Phaedra was the exact opposite. She had the perfect upbringing. After attending and graduating from law school, she became a successful lawyer. As a young girl, I had always dreamt of being a lawyer. Phaedra was my mentor, and not only did I respect her, but I really admired her. She was like the princess in a fairy tale book I had read as a child. Okay, this is interesting. Phaedra Parks was, in essence, the first positive female role model I had in my life besides my mother. It lifted my spirits and revived hope inside me to have a friend who knew exactly where I wanted to be in life. Phaedra Parks had the resources to help me get there. I saw her as someone who could show me how to stay out of trouble, point me in the right direction, and help me straighten out my life. Phaedra showed me that there was much more to life than what I had seen. To be honest, Phaedra was my inspiration. This is from the exact same chapter, and just really pay attention to how this lady idolized Phaedra. Like, it's actually like, you know, earlier I said people thought that they were like bumping coochies. I see why. Listen to this. She wanted what she's talking about her mom. This is Angela Stanton, and she's talking about how her mom and her grandma really grew to like Phaedra. And she says, she wanted whatever Phaedra had to rub off on me. Phaedra was independent, successful, and had money. She was a career woman with a very bright future. I remembered the times when Phaedra would pick me up to ride through the city in one of her expensive cars. We were big shit. My feeling of self-worth rose off the chains. Although we were two diametrically different people, our relationship strongly supported the theory that opposites attract. We talked to each other on the phone on a daily basis. Phaedra was living the good life. The money and the cars, the entertainers, and everything about her life appeared to be so grand. It was the type of life I wanted, and I wouldn't stop until I possessed it myself. As our relationship continued to grow, I kept thinking that Phaedra was too good to hang around me and my crew. I mean, we were all from the streets. All of us were illegal. Drug dealers, drug users, prostitutes, and hustlers. Some of Atlanta's finest, if I may say so myself. And that sounds like Atlanta. My title was Hustler, and I was a good one. This was a quality Phaedra may have seen in me. I hustled whatever I could get my hands on. Everyone I knew, from family to friends, had some illegal kind of way to make fast money. Whenever they needed my assistance, I would provide my services for a small fee, of course. My loyalty and good work ethic paid off. When someone wanted a job well done, I was that person they would call. Whether it was drugs, hot items, or my body, I did everything. From middleman to the running man and the front man, I played all the positions in the game. Street life was my expertise until Phaedra started showing me a totally different lifestyle. And listen, this lady, she's being real with it. She's straight up. She's like, I did it all. You wanted some illegal things done? Call me. I'll get it done for you. And like she said, Phaedra absolutely saw that from a mile away and recruited this lady. This one is real interesting to me, guys, and anybody who watched Real Housewives of Atlanta while Phaedra was on there can kind of like put two and two together that this is adding up, because listen to what she says. It was not a stretch to believe that she had an intimate relationship with Drama behind my back. She even admitted it on national television when she blurted out that her freak number was an 8 or 9. Besides that, Drama had told me the same thing too many times on too many different occasions. Just about every conversation Phaedra and I had would result in her talking about sex. She would often elaborate about her performance of some type of sexual act. Phaedra threw herself at any man she felt she could benefit from, and that was just about any entertainer or athlete who showed interest.
8th grade, nothing, Phaedra. We caught up with each other when you was a young lawyer trying to get in the game.
No.
I'm the big homie.
Chuck, please. Now,
Hey, I want you to admit, it's okay.
But it might be because of all the concussions. You know, he was a linebacker, so he charged to getting hit in the head too many times.
Dude, back in the day, when you was trying to come up and be super successful, I was that guy in Atlanta. I was in my prime. I was from your hometown, and that's what it is. But what describes who we really were, we're the first version of friends with the benefit, girl. It goes way before that, yeah.
But that ain't it, y'all. That ain't it. Listen to this. I considered Phaedra a friend, so there were plenty of visits to her home. Some were for business and plenty for pleasure. Sometimes I would visit her just so we could talk over a glass of wine. We talked about everything from men, clothes, sex, children, and the future. She also shared her personal photo album with me. There were all kinds of pictures of her dressed up as a dominatrix, bent over and posing in different positions. I was shocked, but it didn't stop me from looking. I bet it didn't. Phaedra tripped me out and I continued viewing the album, but I was mostly in disbelief. I recalled the first time I visited her home on Oregon Trail in Marietta, Georgia. How ironic is it that Phaedra supposedly is the one who started the rumor about Candy having a sex dungeon when, according to Angela Stanton, she is the one who had a sex dungeon. Listen to this. There was a big spacious living room on the left decorated in maroon and gold colors. So y'all, she gives an entire rundown of this home that Phaedra was living in at the time. The kitchen was located further down the hall. Her bedroom had a queen-size canopy bed and there was a master bathroom. Her home was average at best, but what really tripped us out was her bedroom. There were a pair of handcuffs attached to the headboards. Whips and freaky-ass underwear were hanging everywhere. This was a den for S&M. Her tools were openly displayed as if she wanted people to know she was a freaky woman. In her bathroom, she had at least $4,000 worth of various makeup products scattered everywhere. This scene was hilarious and ironic. Since she was an entertainment lawyer, we thought she would be somewhat conservative and modest, especially since she was the daughter of a preacher. Yeah, right. Phaedra was into all kinds of S&M activities. Back in those days, everybody in Atlanta heard the rumors about her sleeping with over 90% of her clients. Y'all, listen.
Let me just say this. I knew Phaedra before the Southern, but I didn't know her, but the word was very heavy on the street about Miss Parks. What was the word saying?
Now I'm going to jump to where the head doctor nickname originates from. Angela, of course, like I said, had a lot of baby daddies. I think her last one was this guy named Shahid, who's apparently like extremely murderous and crazy and all of that. Shahid was coming with Angela to her meetups with Phaedra and Everett. And according to her, on one occasion, Shahid, Angela, and Phaedra just sitting around shooting the shit. In the midst of that, she says Everett did not want any problems because, you know, Everett had heard about Shahid's reputation in the streets. But Shahid apparently liked kicking it with Angela and Phaedra. She says Faye was crazy and would run her mouth about anything. I remember one day we were sitting in her office and somehow we got on the topic of oral. I was very, very uncomfortable, but it was Faye, Shahid, and me, so I thought not too much of the conversation. Faye decided to share the intimate details on the proper way to perform. Suddenly, she began demonstrating with her lips, mouth, tongue, and hands. I glanced at Shahid. He was sitting directly across from me and looked like a little kid in a candy store. Wait, a candy store would be an understatement, she said. Let's say Willy Wonka's chocolate factory. So, then out of nowhere, Shahid said, "Hey, so you mean to tell me you the one who taught her that?" Well, let me be the first to say thank you, really. Then he continued shouting, "Certified head doctor." This was now Phaedra's official street name.
Head doctor. And in my opinion, I just took it as, you know, not a brain surgeon, as a dick surgeon. That's how
So, I mentioned to you guys that one of the things Angela accused Phaedra of in this book is breaking attorney-client privilege and confidentiality. For those who don't know, this is a really big thing. Your lawyer is not supposed to discuss your case with anyone else, unless it's like a paralegal or, somebody like that, people who absolutely have no choice but to know. And even then, paralegals are bound by confidentiality as well. And I know this because I was in school to become one. So listen to this. Phaedra loved to run her mouth about whatever she could find to talk about. This is the person who claims she just does not gossip, right? So it came as no surprise when she gave me the inside scoop. Like when Mystical was first arrested, Phaedra represented him as well. I knew a lot of details about him based on my conversations with Phaedra. So much for attorney-client confidentiality. I will not elaborate on too many details for the sake of Mystical, but I would like to say that Phaedra told me that Mystical was guilty long before he was ever convicted. Okay, so apparently Mystical went to a room with a lady. The lady stole checks from him and ran up $80,000. Instead of reporting the lady to the police, he invited the lady back to his room, and him and his friends gang raped the lady. I don't know if he was ever convicted on this, so I will throw in allegedly, but this is basically what she's talking about. Phaedra came back and told her that story. She also talks a little bit about Phaedra's dating history throughout the early 2000s. And to me, this is what kind of drives home even more that Apollo was kind of like a last resort for her. She spoke about an NFL player that Phaedra was dating that she really liked. And then she brought up DJ Nabs of Atlanta. Apparently DJ Nabs is a really popular Atlanta radio personality. I think he's a little bit before my time from the research I did. But Angela says she stalked DJ Nabs. She said, please believe that I promise you she did. She would call him back to back, constantly trying to control him and his every move. She was a very demanding individual. I would ride with her by his house several times. She would just drive by to see if he was home. So basically, Phaedra was fucking nuts. And I don't know if you guys recall, I will insert the picture again, but DJ Nabs, there's a throwback picture I included of Phaedra. DJ Nabs is the one who is talking to her and has the mic in her hand.
Yours truly, DJ Nabs here inside the lab. We're about to get this thing. Make some noise. Yes, darling. What do you think about Platinum Soul?
Awesome, hot, very hot.
Awesome, very hot. You heard it here, right?
Okay, at this point, she is talking about how Phaedra has, they've gained each other's trust, and Phaedra is bringing her into more of the illegal activities that she was allegedly participating in. So she starts by saying, Phaedra, made a promise to me that if I ever got into any trouble, she would represent me. That was my security blanket. She told me that there was a secret society among lawyers and judges. Basically, she made me believe if I ever got busted for anything, she would be able to get me off. This was due to her affiliations and influences. It was all I needed to hear. I was ready to go. It started out very simple. Every morning, Phaedra and I had a meeting at either her home or her office she shared with another attorney at 1069 Spring Street in Atlanta, Georgia. Pictured now. Phaedra would provide computer printouts, fake identification cards, and fraudulent checks. The computer printouts contained brand names and the model numbers of specific electronic items. These included laptop computers, Palm Pilots, Palm Pilots, and DVD players, jewelry, home furnishings, and televisions. I always assumed she had money and couldn't quite understand why she needed such a large quantity of high items. She never paid me for these types of jobs, but that was fine with me. My payment came in the form of additional checks she provided for my own use. There were no complaints coming from me. I had everything I wanted, as a prepaid attorney was on my side if things went bad. In this business venture, Phaedra provided her family and friends with the latest in electronics for half the retail price. I found out how superior Phaedra's operation was by the people she dealt with. This part really got me though. After the allotted time went by, Apollo gave me a check for $27,000 to deposit in the account. At this point, this is after 2000, where Phaedra has went ahead and introduced Angela to Apollo, and now they're all doing this thing together. So the check was from an insurance company and made out to my alias. Her alias was Tara Evans, by the way. I deposited the check, and Apollo told me that we had to wait 5 to 7 business days for the check to clear. I was cool with that, but those 5 days were the longest days ever. I was tired of window shopping. I was ready to go to the malls and buy everything I deserved. And that kind of lets you know, like, where her mind frame was at the time, you know. The day Phaedra called my phone and told me the check had cleared was like sweet music to my ears. It seemed I had waited for her to call all my life. I knew how to handle my business straight up. I put on a navy blue business suit and broke out my sophisticated wig. Then I met her at her office within 45 minutes. This is what she talks about. She brought one of her children's fathers in with her, which is, and she name drops a lot in this book, but I think she does that for the simple fact that she wants people to be able to corroborate these experiences. Like, no, I'm not lying. I'm going to give you names. I'm going to give you dates. I'm going to give you furniture. I'm going to give you every little detail that I can remember so that people know I'm not lying. So in this excerpt, she's saying that her baby's father, Slim, would go with her sometimes to Phaedra's office whenever she was meeting with Phaedra and Apollo. And she had another baby daddy. She had a lot of baby daddies, y'all. She had another one that would go with her when she would meet Phaedra and Everett. And basically, they were coming with her just to make sure that she was safe. I smiled when I overheard Faye bragging about me. He told Faye we had another stop, and after that, we would link up with her. I was very excited about the money. Don't get me wrong, but I kept thanking God that I had gotten away. I wasn't all that excited about going into another bank anytime soon. I mean, how many times can a person get away before that person is actually caught? This was $20,000 and was a good number. I was cool with that. So to speed this up, it was a $27,000 check. What they did was get $20,000 out of one bank and then get $7,000 out of Bank of America on Piedmont Street. All of you ATLians know what that means. I have no idea what that is. But she says, I walked inside the bank, again pushing any fear to the back of my mind. I walked back out of the bank with $7,000 cash. I gave Apollo the money to put with the other $20,000. He immediately called Faye, and we met up at the Checkers restaurant downtown on 10th and Spring Street. Phaedra pulled up and hopped in the car with us. She gave me $4,000, $27,000, y'all. Approximately 5 years of jail time on the table, and she got $4,000. She and Apollo kept the rest of the money. I eventually recognized that the $4,000 was low pay for the high risk of my freedom. Being young and naive, $4,000 seemed like a lot of money to me at that particular time. Besides, it was a little too late to start complaining about the money. I had agreed to the payment for my service beforehand. We were at the office one day having one of our girl talks when I brought up Apollo's name. So Angela says she brings up Apollo's name to Phaedra, I think just to get a feel of how Phaedra felt about him. And apparently Phaedra was like, it was just a business relationship and that Apollo was a plaything, never anything super duper serious prior to the start of his prison sentence in 2004. Not only that, but Phaedra even told Angela that Apollo only has one testicle. And he lost the other one in a motorcycle accident. So Angela went back and told Apollo. She said, I wanted to see his reaction. It may not have been right, but it was really hilarious at the time. I thought he was going to be cool, calm, and collective about it. Because she says from the moment she had met Apollo, he was always cool, calm, collected, and very respectful. But turns out he wasn't. He called Phaedra right there on the spot. And oh Lord, did it go down behind her disclosure about his private parts. That was very personal for him, as it should be. I could tell by the way he handled the situation that it had hurt him deeply. He explained that it was caused from a motorcycle accident. Wow, he really did have one testicle, she said. Faye laughed like hell about it. She even called me on a 3-way call a day later to let me hear his ranting and raving. She wanted to go out of her way to show me that she could care less about his feelings, and she didn't even care about me telling him what she said. It was a joke to her. She laughed, I laughed, and we both really laughed after hearing how he snapped on Phaedra. He was crying like a baby. Apollo was absolutely livid. Okay, y'all, those are just a few excerpts of the book from different chapters. I tried my best not to be redundant, but Angela Stanton's story is a big part of this timeline. That's why it's kind of frustrating when she and other people kind of report different years for certain events, because I hate giving out the wrong information and having to go back and correct myself, right? But at the same time, these things were well over 10 years ago, so it's understandable that the years would be a little fuzzy, and that's also why I felt like it was so important to read the book instead of just providing snippets from interviews. Now, the book has way more information than I just told y'all. Like I said, she name drops several people in the book, and she goes into great detail about many of her tragic and traumatic life experiences, the main one being giving birth to her child while handcuffed to a bed. As stated in prior videos, Angela says that once she was released from prison in 2005, Phaedra became extremely hard to reach. Shortly after her release, she had to report to the parole office, and it's there she was confronted and transported by 2 federal agents to the Richard B. Russell Federal Building. Things get really weird at this point because she says the federal agents were trying to get her to snitch on young Jeezy. Yes, Jeezy. They legit asked her if she'd be willing to wear a wire. Angela does touch on young Jeezy a little bit in her book. Apparently she knew him, and apparently she told other people this on jail calls and stuff like that, and the feds were listening to her calls. So they asked if she wanted to make her case disappear by wearing a wire and asking Jeezy to sell her some weed. Weird, right? But anyway, on their way to this Russell B building, this is what they're talking about. Once they get there, she's placed in a holding cell until she can see a judge. Once Angela sees the judge, she's literally pleading with her not to send her back to jail, considering she's the only one that can really take care of her kids. Luckily, the judge shows her mercy and places her on a pretrial release program. After several attempts to contact Phaedra, she was finally successful. She says that when she told Phaedra all of this information, she acted completely surprised, as if she knew nothing about Angela's federal charges, which we know is a big-ass lie. Angela basically had Phaedra's life in her hands, and I'm sure she was keeping tabs on her moves throughout the penal system. Angela says that Phaedra told her straight up that she was afraid. She knew that the closer the feds got to Angela, the more her life and her career, basically everything she'd worked for, was at stake. Phaedra told Angela that she'd represent her at the trial and to not expect her to go to trial until a year or 2 later. And as the story goes, when Angela showed up to court a year later, she was informed by the judge that Phaedra was no longer representing her. And I also want to correct something. In part 1, I commented that Phaedra was representing Everett and Apollo. And I want to reiterate that this is something Angela Stanton says, or she says that they were working together. But I don't want to put out any misleading information. I did want to correct that, but she did say that it was at that moment she realized that Phaedra had been working with Everett and Apollo. Not anything that we can confirm on court docs, but come on, it's not far-fetched. So, from what I've observed, it seems that Phaedra's pattern is to link up with vulnerable and reckless individuals. She appeals to them with that homegrown Southern wisdom and wit, make them feel close to her, then she manipulates them into doing whatever it is she needs to be done. Once the kitchen gets too hot, Phaedra backs away and basically leaves the ones closest to her holding the bag. What makes this so sick, though, is her split personality. I'm well aware that people are multifaceted, but Phaedra is a wolf in sheep's clothing, and the way she gets close to people and then cuts them so deeply, it's incredibly dangerous. Her inability to own any of her wrongdoings is also a pattern I've noticed, but we're getting there. Phaedra's first reaction to this book was to deny, which of course she has the right to do. She first addressed it through a tweet in which she stated her lawyers would be on it swiftly. Soon after, Phaedra filed a defamation lawsuit against Angela Stanton and Vibe in 2012. In response, Angela Stanton filed a countersuit. Vibe completely distanced themselves from the book and stopped promoting it. The case would go on for 3 years before the ladies could get a court date set for June 6, 2016. Up until that day, though, there are a few interesting things that happened. For one, even though Phaedra brought the lawsuit, she dodged every attempt they made to depose her. Here are some documents where Angela's lawyer, whose name is watermarked on the documents, explains his several attempts to reach out to her. I'm also going to read emails contained in this motion for summary judgment between Angela's lawyer and Phaedra's lawyer. Okay guys, so I am about to read a letter sent from James Radford, which is Angela's attorney, to Phaedra's attorney. And the subject is Phaedra Parks versus Angela Stanton, notice of deposition. The letter starts by saying, "Dear Paul, I have been trying for the past 2 months." He sent this February 5th, 2014, the day after Angela Stanton did her deposition. And he says at this point, he's been trying for 2 months to schedule your client, Phaedra, deposition in this case. So for 2 months, that means he was trying to get her deposition in December of 2013. And this is after Apollo had already kind of gone through his arrest and stuff like that. So I can see why she was trying to dodge the deposition. I mean, people were already looking at her sideways after the shit with Apollo hit the fan, and now you wanted to depose her and ask her questions that could possibly expose her? I think not. He continues by saying, "I have proposed numerous potential dates and have been promised by you numerous times to provide me with a mutually acceptable date. As of today, February 5th, 2014, you have not provided me with a date. In contrast, I have cooperated with you to arrange a time and place for you to depose my client, which we did yesterday. You have given me several invalid reasons why you do not want to schedule the deposition. Yesterday, you erroneously stated that you believe my client's counterclaims were legally deficient and suggested that we stay discovery while you filed a summary judgment motion." And I'll read those emails to you guys next. "As I pointed out to you, the fate of the counterclaims has nothing to do with my entitlement to depose the plaintiff." Because keep in mind, y'all, Phaedra filed the initial lawsuit. Angela Stanton filed a countersuit. So this lawyer that Phaedra has is trying to put it to Angela's lawyer like, you should not be trying to depose Phaedra because your client doesn't have a case. But Angela's lawyer is like, I have to depose Phaedra anyway because she brought the initial lawsuit. So today you told me you were upset that I had posted information about this case on my website and you needed to review my writing before scheduling the deposition. Again, that is an invalid reason to refuse to cooperate in discovery. First, the information I posted was in no way inappropriate and was fully acceptable under the rules of professional conduct. Second, my blogging has nothing to do with my entitlement to take the plaintiff's deposition. The letter is much longer, but I'm going to stop there and just move on to reading the emails. Okay, so in this email at the very top on February 11, 2014, and I think this is his response to the letter that he had received. This is Phaedra's lawyer speaking, and he says, "James, she cannot change those travel plans. I am fine with staying discovery pending judge ruling on my MSJ, which is a motion for summary judgment. I think that is the most efficient thing to do." James Radford replies and says, "Paul, in thinking further about this, I am going to have to insist that your client honor the February 18th deposition notice. I am sorry if she has travel plans, but discovery has been ongoing in this case for months, and I have been trying to get from you a deposition date for months, and you and your client simply have refused to give me one. Now, discovery is about to end, and as it stands, it is going to end without me ever being to take the plaintiff's deposition, which is Phaedra. Your trial calendar is something you cannot get out of. Your client's travel plans are something that can be rearranged. She brought this lawsuit, and it was your proposal that we reopen discovery, and she has to bear some responsibility to arrange her schedule such that the most basic discovery task. Her deposition can be accomplished. If you and your client do not intend to honor the notice, please let me know in writing. Email is fine. This will at least allow me to file the motion to compel so that we could take the matter up when court calls a hearing on all these pending motions. Paul responds and says, well, I am on a trial calendar that week. Multiple defendants. Some of the defendants have settled, but one remains. Also, I am going to file a partial MSJ this week and ask the court to stay discovery, so you may want to take a look at that and then get back with me. Then Phaedra's lawyer says, as I mentioned before, if your client loses her MSJ, motion summary judgment, which by the way, guys, the information I'm reading to you now comes from that motion summary judgment that Angela's lawyer filed on her behalf. And I'll explain to you guys what that is a little bit later. Anyway, this is Phaedra's lawyer, and he says, if your client loses MSJ and her claims are gone, then I'm pretty sure my client, Phaedra, would dismiss her claims and there would be no need to even depose her. You seem to indicate the judge's staff attorney recommended extending discovery and scheduling an all motions hearing. I am fine with doing that, and it seems the reasonable thing to do. Let me know. So James replies and says, I don't agree to staying discovery. I will agree to an extension to schedule your client's deposition if you will agree to a date. Again, your MSJ as to the counterclaims has no impact on my right to depose the plaintiff, whose claims would remain regardless. If your position is to say no to the deposition, then please make that clear so I can file a motion to compel. As stated previously, Angela Stanton completed her deposition on February 4th, 2014. It would last for over 5 hours. And by the way, I will be linking these court documents in the description box, but they are not free to access. I'm also going to insert a screen grab of a few parts of her deposition that I think are worth mentioning. This is how she found out she was being sued. Here, she's basically explaining to the lawyer that she did not feel comfortable with Phaedra having her address. And if you go down to the square that I have zoomed in, I know it's extremely hard to read, but that is where we're going to pick up. And she's saying because she didn't feel comfortable with Phaedra having her address, she went to BJ Bernstein's office and picked up the lawsuit in person. Question, when did you first learn of the lawsuit? Angela, through my publisher. Question, did they call you or write you? Angela, I can't recall. It may have been a telephone conversation. I believe I learned through my publisher and I learned through LaRon Rogers. Answer, it may have been the same day. Somewhere close in time to that? Yes, sir. So it was at that time that you learned of a lawsuit. I learned of a cease and desist letter at that time. I'm not really exactly sure when it was that I learned of the lawsuit. The first lawsuit, which is in regards to this article, was filed in federal court and did not include me. It was against my publisher and it was against Vibe. Publisher is the Augustus Publishing, who had a partnership with Vibe. Question, why did you not want them to know where you lived? I was receiving death threats. Everett Tripodis had called my home, which was her co-defendant. He called her home personally. I have no idea how he found out where I live at. I was afraid. I knew that this case was serious. I knew that a lot of stuff was getting ready to come to light, and I felt as if my life was being threatened. Even now, I still feel the same way, and I was talking to my attorney about why Ms. Parks had to have my personal address. I still feel that something may happen. A little ways down on page 129, this is where she gets into how this thing with Phaedra has interfered with her business dealings. So the questioning starts by saying, you claim that Ms. Parks has interfered with your business or contractual relationships, correct? Yes, sir. Specifically with Augustus Publishing? Yes, sir. With anyone else? I'd say Vibe. Anyone else? I'd say the bloggers and the people that hold websites, they were trying to report on my story. People that were trying to interview me that she sent cease and desist letters to, telling them it was a lie, and basically just making people believe that I was some bitter, crazed lunatic just trying to come after her for money and not tell my personal story. Did you have business relationships or contracts with bloggers? Angela says, no, I did not, but I did have some potential interest in my story, which of course would generate sales for my book. And once they received cease and desist letters and didn't agree to publish my story, that in return, of course, affected my sales. So then he asks, who are the bloggers? And she mentions a few bloggers that I'm not necessarily going to name right now. But there is one in particular she names that published her story and said that shortly after she received a threatening letter from Phaedra's attorneys, not only demanding that she retract the story, but that she retract the story and say it was all lies. So on this page, Angela is explaining how that damaged her. And she says, it's cast me as a lunatic. People, up until Apollo got arrested, but people were actually saying that I was just some crazed, bitter, obsessed person. None of this stuff ever happened. I'm just trying to make a quick buck. My story is all lies. It's not true. So people perceive me that way. And of course, it hurt the sales of my narrative. Not only did it hurt the sales of my narrative, it affected me in business. Things that I was doing as far as working with Atlanta Public Schools, the Juvenile Detention Center, working with other partner community organizations that help young children. It just didn't look right. It didn't sit well at all. It affected my business all the way around the board. On pages 90 and 91, I know you guys are probably wondering why I'm not going in order. I really just follow the story as it comes to me, and then I go back. Sometimes I can't follow things in order because I want to connect the dots for y'all. So we're on page 90 and 91 now. She speaks about how her publisher, which is actually Augustus Publishing, as I explained, who had a license agreement with Vibe to distribute and market the book, began to distance themselves from her soon after Phaedra sent a cease and desist. And y'all, this isn't in this page, but she also explains that she had no control over the cover of her book or the title of her book. She didn't get control over that stuff until they basically stopped promoting her book, and she then had to take it to Amazon, where she was able to change the name to Life of a Housewife, the Angela Stanton story. So Mr. Andrew, Phaedra's lawyer, tells her to take a look at a exhibit, and he asks, is this your first time seeing this? And she says it is. And what it is basically are her book sales. And he says, so you've never seen the document before? She says, this is my first time seeing this document. She says she's never even seen anything like it. He asks, how many copies of your book, Lives of a Housewife, have you sold in total? She says, I have no idea. I never received a dime. So Augustus or Vibe has never paid you any money whatsoever? No, sir. Have they ever told you how many copies of your book they sold? No, sir. How many ways have you tried to sell your book? I know you tried to sell it, for example, through Augustus. She says through Augustus Publishing, and then I put up the ebook through Amazon, my publishing company. Stop the silence first. So if you didn't know, you can publish your own book through this thing that Amazon has. So that is basically what she's talking about. So on page 93, we pick back up, but he's apparently shown her another exhibit. And unfortunately, she says she does not recognize that either. He says, did Vibe or Augustus start marketing your book back in the March of 2012, which is obviously when it was published and when that infamous interview dropped? She says, March of 2012, yes, sir. He said, when did they stop marketing it? She says, February of 2013, January possibly, but either January or February of 2013. He says, how do you know that? She says, my publisher told me that they came to some type of agreement with Phaedra and they were not going to be allowed to publish or promote or market my book. So to sum up everything I've just read, in Angela's countersuit, she's named several bloggers that have ran stories about her book. She also alleges that around that time, Phaedra was threatening other bloggers and her publishing company with lawsuits if they didn't take the story down and say it was all a lie. This greatly impacted Angela's credibility and subsequently her book sales. She says that this would change when Apollo was arrested earlier that year in 2014. Remember two things, guys. Apollo was arrested on January 2014 for those fraud charges I explained in part 2. Angela's deposition is taking place the very next month on February 4th, 2014. It's unfortunate that Apollo's arrest was what revived her story and some of her credibility. I would think it would be the story of Jessica Voker, a woman who formerly worked as a pro in the Atlanta area. Angela name-dropped Mrs. Voker in her deposition, so I went to Google to see what I could find out about her, and holy fuck. I know that name, Jessica Voker, might not be familiar to many of you, but to some of you, it may be, at least her last name. I said she was a former pro, but she's also affiliated with some heavy hitters or some former heavy hitters in, crime and stuff like that. And that's just where I'll leave that. Y'all go do your own research on that. Anyway, this white lady has damn near the same story as Angela Stanton. And get this, her story came out around the exact same time as Angela's. For some reason, Phaedra was so focused on shutting Angela down in 2012, she let Jessica slip through the cracks. But I won't. Here's audio from an interview Jessica Voker did in 2013 regarding the release of her book.
My affiliation with her started back in 2000. I met her through my ex-husband at the time. We also had several businesses and nightclubs there off of Piedmont. I met her through getting my name and different things, and which led to a lot of other things.
Okay.
I let her know that I was contemplating coming out with a book and everything, and she was like, "Oh, well, girl, don't include me, haha." And I didn't think anything of it at the time, honestly, because I was having a blind moment. I was like, okay, but not knowing the history that she's done other people wrong and things that I found out within that time, and now I'm like, no, of course you're going in the book.
She has the Southern Belle thing going on. What do you think about that?
I think that's really cute and a lie. I started calling Phaedra fake girl years ago, and just finding out that she was sleeping with my husband.
Whoa.
All the criminal activity that she was involved in, that she had me involved in, just everything that she would allow herself to do.
Mm-hmm.
I am a firm believer of everyone can change. I've changed. I have a bedroom, of closet skeletons. However, she's still the grimy person that she was 10 years ago. She's still conniving and sneaky and, has her hands in several different things that no one would even believe she's a part of.
Basically, what you're saying is, at the end of the day, her and her husband are actually a good match because of both of their backgrounds.
They're awesome.
Okay.
Now, see, I don't know a lot about Apollo. I don't follow him.
To keep it real, I'm sure he's cleaner than her. I mean, all he did was a little bit of car, this and that. This woman does mortgage fraud, prostitution, all types of things. So he didn't never involve himself with anything of that.
Right.
At the time, she didn't even have anything to do with him. She was so busy into mystical and this guy named Chris that was from Bankhead and all types of things. So he wasn't a factor.
Right. You ran the prostitution ring with Phaedra allegedly, but in the end, you just had nothing to hide. You wanted to make it known. What made you want to tell your story?
Well, actually, when I first found out about Angela Stanton, I contacted her with a little email and some information that only she knew I would know this chick,
Right.
And we connected, and she's been nothing but good to me.
And you see the life that she's portraying to the fans of the show. How did that come across to you initially when you first noticed it? What were those thoughts that were going through your head as far as seeing her do that?
Looking for Ashton Kutcher to come out and say I was pumped. Because I remember that my son was 3 months old in her house in Marietta and could not even be on her couch.
Wow.
This was her godchild. So she despised kids, and she didn't even want him on her couch.
Wow.
I'm like, really? So, she's too busy trying to hustle and let's do this and this to get money. And I'm like, okay, so now you're a good mommy and you're a Southern Belle, so you've never sold your ass or anything.
Right.
And you
bring it again.
Not true, several occasions. And it's probably going to be a whole lot of people that, are going to come out of the woodworks with this when my book comes out, and I'm sure Fulton County would like to know some things as well.
Right. Let me ask you this: how would you say this is a random question? It's one of those questions that kind of, since I've seen Phaedra on the show, I've been asking myself, how would you say she paid for herself to go to law school? What do you think helped her get through law school?
I'm sure a little bit of the hustle that she's had. I mean, honestly, I don't know how she funded that, so I don't want to lie about anything, because one thing I do is keep it real.
Right.
So I don't want to say, oh, she probably sold her ass. That's what we was doing.
Right.
I know we was doing it in 2000, 2001, 2002. I don't know what she was doing through law school, because when I heard she was a lawyer, I met her. She was on top of her gold J30 Infinity, beat up, with makeup all in the car, dirty, with a short dress, flopping her ass in front of Too Short and my husband and several other people in the car wash at 3 o'clock in the morning. And my husband says, "Oh, that's attorney Jake." Her?
Right. Wow. Let me ask you this now. As far as, I keep hearing you say something about her sleeping with your husband. Are you in, what was his name?
Bernie Voker.
Okay, are you guys still married or?
No, we're divorced. I divorced him when he went and he's incarcerated. He's actually getting out next year. She still takes his calls and has promised him all types of things when he gets out. I can't see how this pans out.
Wow, but do you think, is it a lawyer, I have my air quotes going on, is it a lawyer-client confidential call, or do you think it's just, just regular old Phaedra hitting it up with?
Regular old Phaedra, I miss your good feet,
Wow. Now, Angela Stanton's name came up on a reunion a few nights ago. I was kind of drawn as to, thrown off almost in a sense as to how it's not being, nothing more is being said about it. Like, I don't hear your name coming up. I don't hear detailed, stuff about Angela's name coming up. How come they're dancing around that, do you think?
I don't know. I think there's some type of flaw she has on that show, as well as, mentioning it, and it's, some type of entrapment or something is going on that she's created. Because, first of all, a lot of people that know her know she's some shit.
Right.
And know that she's portraying this, she's very grimy, and she'll be your best friend, and she will turn around and be with your man and take everything from you and drain you of life. And that's who she is. She wants to hurt you. She's very evil and vindictive. But she'll still smile in your face and take you to, what's her favorite spot? The Thai Castle used to be, and, introduce you to things and want you to, you want to like her.
Right.
You're like, wow, she's positive. She's going to help me to get the life. I'm telling her I'm trying to get out the game.
Mm-hmm.
She's trying to have me go in and cash checks and stuff. So, so she don't have your best interest at heart. She's not a real friend. So I feel sorry. I can't believe other people have not came out as like Angela and I, because there's a lack of people that she's done stuff with. So it's only in the time. I don't know why she's getting by with this. But like I said, people that don't know her, they say, "Oh, she's such a lawyer, and she's this and that."
Right.
So, look at all the corrupt people in the world that have high positions.
Looking at her and Apollo, I would say that Apollo definitely wasn't into her. That's just my opinion, though. Right. Do you feel like he owes her some type of favor, maybe, being married to her, or?
I think that she has the key to the door that he wanted right now at this time. Whether it be the lifestyle, whether it be, I'm sure she has a lot of stuff on him and he has a lot on her.
Right.
It's not love there, because you can honestly see that it's fake. It's not genuine. But I think that I don't know honestly what it is, but it's something there that I'm sure will come out eventually, because everything is going to come out.
Through this entire time, has any of the housewives reached out to you to kind of see what's going on, or to get you to come on the show, or just to kind of see what actually took place in Phaedra's past?
I've actually talked to one that knows me, and knows of me, who I was.
I know, it's a lot. Jessica Voker's story sounds eerily similar to the pattern that I observed in Phaedra's behavior as stated previously in this video. And I really think the reason why we have never heard Jessica Voker's name in the way that we heard Angela Stanton's is because Phaedra ignored her. And I really wonder why Phaedra ignored her but chose to pursue Angela Stanton. I really can't speculate, but I'll put the question out there. I love that the interviewer with Jessica Voker alluded to Phaedra doing these things to put herself through law school. Obviously, we don't know that for a fact, but it would make sense. Phaedra may have come from a good family, but she didn't come from a rich family. Her participating in these things to put herself through law school and maybe even to gain more high-profile clients doesn't make her a bad person, in my opinion. She just got it out the mud. However, her history of putting people more vulnerable than her onto crime they never even participated in before her, then burning them right after, is what really got us here. Okay, we're in 2014. Phaedra is in the midst of this lawsuit with Angela Stanton, though she is totally unresponsive and clearly doesn't want to do her part as the plaintiff. She's in the middle of filming season 6 and 7 of the show at this time as well, and we're witnessing her marriage to Apollo Nida fall apart. Apollo had been confronted by federal agents a year prior in 2013. He had gone to court and received a sentence of 8 years, which Bravo filmed in real time. More information on this can be found in part 2 of this series. Before going into custody though, he had a few things he needed to get off his chest in season 7 of The Real Housewives.
I'm not a murderer. I'm not a child molester. I wasn't the guy on the corner selling cocaine. I understand what I've done is illegal. It's wrong. But it's fixable. The charges that I pled to were wire fraud, bank fraud, and mail fraud. I basically controlled shell corporations, and I got caught because a co-conspirator got into a bind and decided to bring me in. My wife and children, they left, and the woman that I thought was supposed to be there for me and cherished me, she's nowhere to be found.
Well, I spoke to him briefly. He was sort of upset that I took the kids and brought them to the hotel, and upset that I'm not going to come to court. But whether I go to court or not, it's not going to change anything. Apollo's actions constitute the ultimate betrayal because I trusted him and I thought he was a changed man. All the media, I'm not going to subject my kids to any of this crazy press stuff because I don't want them to have any idea of the disaster that's going on. And I got to be a parent first.
You don't understand that?
No.
People haven't tried to take her house, they haven't tried to take her job, they haven't tried to garnish any of her money.
What about the public shame?
The public shame?
People looking at me cross.
That's all you care about is other people.
No,
Yeah.
I care about my good name that I had prior to you.
Why did she marry me? Was it solely for the kids? When you love someone, love is unconditional. I don't want to be in this relationship no more.
That's fine.
I don't. I'm going to talk to the divorce counsel, and I'm going to go my own way.
All right, bye-bye.
I've tried and tried and tried.
You haven't tried.
Yes, I have tried.
This is the first time Apollo's mentioned that he wanted a divorce. But if that is what he truly wants, bon voyage.
Because guess what? The selfishness has to stop.
So then stop being selfish.
I'm not selfish like you, man. Never have been. Never have been. If it don't benefit you, you don't care.
All right, I'm done with this conversation.
Yeah, of course you are. Because you always want to run from what?
I ain't trying to run from nothing, but you're not saying anything of any
You
value.
didn't let me speak. You was interrupting me. Just like now. You have a moment that I can speak with you for a second?
I'm getting ready to leave.
Okay, this is what I'll say to you. I apologize to you. It was a lie. I was upset. I was mad at a lot of things because a lot of stuff was taken out of proportion. At first, it was on some DVD stuff. We're going to try to make money together. Next thing you know, it turns into this, man, it just made my life a living hell.
You don't get what I've been through because of the things that you said to your wife. She told all of these women that I'm with that I did those things. Like, they really believe that. Like, I've been called a lot of things, and some of them have been true. But one thing I've never been is anybody's sport.
Regardless of where we at, I need to see my kids.
I don't understand her mentality because she chose you when you first came home from the joint. You were in there for 5-6 years.
Okay, I'm gonna flip it back on you. How can I come home to the projects, right, sleeping on an air mattress? I got an ankle monitor. I can't leave. You coming every day to see me. Oh man, you grew up. You're a man now. I like your body. Oh, baby, I rub your feet. I like. What time is it? Hey, who is this? 3 o'clock in the morning. Who is this? Hey, baby, can I come and see you? Yeah, busting in the gate. Okay, cool.
She used to come and see you when you was on the air mattress?
On the air mattress, dog. On the air mattress.
I'm gonna tell you this, because if you come home from the joint and I'm an attorney and I'm coming over there, that means I'm riding with you 1,000%. I don't give a what happened. If I got 50 cents, I'm giving you 25. Baby, take this 25. Go make it into $1.
Like Phaedra used to be down. Come on, what happened to the good times? I know everybody grows and we elevate, but damn, you don't just, you abandoned me at my time of need, at my lowest point.
Let me ask you this. Last time I seen you in here, you approached Kenya and then you apologized to her. I'm confused.
When she mentioned the whole texting thing, I didn't know where it was going. I was like, man, how am I gonna get out of this? And how will I turn this around to look better for me?
Yeah.
Because now you put me in a situation where I can't explain it. You bang my head off. You try to make my wife think that me and you have something going on. Then guess what? Let's do it.
Yeah.
You want to turn it up? Let's turn it up. And so I did what I did. I said what I said and I ran to the bank with it. I cashed out. I said,
Well, you know what? I spoke to Kenya the other day.
Oh, did you? How was she?
did. She was cool. She didn't come across bitter or anything like that.
Okay. So you think she's going to come see me?
Really? I'm gonna have to send you a bunch of magazines, bro.
Thank you. What are you talking about, Apollo? Change the garage door, bro?
I don't have access to my garage.
Well, you weren't supposed to be here, so I didn't know who you left it with. You're supposed to be reporting to prison today.
Apollo would begin his 8-year prison sentence in early 2014, but Angela Stanton wouldn't be going away so easily. Because of Phaedra's unresponsiveness in her own lawsuit, Angela's lawyer had no choice but to file a motion for summary judgment in court against Phaedra. A motion for summary judgment is basically a motion that asks the court to issue a judgment on one of the claims in the lawsuit. It's typically done right before trial begins to see if trial can actually be avoided. Phaedra's lawyer had asked to extend discovery so that they'd have more time to conduct additional discovery, and this was done in November 2013, the prior year. Yet, at the time Angela's lawyer had filed their MSJ, there had still been no response from Phaedra, which leads me to believe she was really trying to drag this out long enough for the public to forget about it. Additionally, I believe she only brought the lawsuit for appearances and had no intention of actually taking this to trial and fighting against it. it. Lawyers will do this. People with extra money will do this. Hold you up in court, have you paying lawyers' fees, hoping to drain you completely and ruin your credibility. Angela's lawyer filed this MSJ on February 14, 2014. And I want you guys to check out this video I found on Angela Stanton's publishing YouTube channel that kind of explains the flow of things a little bit more.
Stanton. I am the national best-selling author of Lies of a Real Housewife. Many of you may remember me from my memoir when it was released back in March 2012. And days after my book was released, my publisher and I were hit with a $30 million lawsuit by Phaedra Parks from Housewives of Atlanta.
I think that Phaedra is backpedaling, and yup, she lied, and we caught her.
About a Housewives viewing party. I did not plan it, but Angela Stanton.
Again, because it was mentioned in season 3 by Nene, but I don't think people picked up on it. I had poured my entire soul into that book. This was my moment of healing. This was my moment of redemption, and it was snatched away.
I took Angela's case because I saw her testimony that she gave in the videos that Vibe released. I researched the case and looked into the background of who I knew was Miss Parks' husband on the television show, and saw that he had actually been implicated in some crimes that were almost exactly what Angela had described.
You did.
Really? I don't think people really understand how it feels to be hated for your own truth. So I think that's why my publishing company is very important to me, because I understand that there are people that are afraid to tell their stories. Not afraid because they think something may necessarily happen to them, but they're afraid of being hated. They're afraid of being rejected. And I think that my story is a perfect example of that.
So I guess you want to come at me with all this bullshit. I would have never did that. I wouldn't have brought that lady who wrote that book about her on here to have a sit-down, full-blown conversation. I wouldn't have did that. She tried to give me that book. I told her, girl, no, take that book away from me.
She called me
But that would be just like me bringing Angela Stanton on this show to sit down with her to talk about a book and talk about how I can help her promote it.
So if the roles were reversed, would you be irritated if she did that?
I wouldn't be if that was what she
you're
does.
so full of shit right now. So if I would have had Angela Stanton sitting in my office,
I sued her and won the case.
What did you win? Because the book's still out there, honey.
Well, it should be out there.
You can buy that book right now. They sit up there talking all about you being a fraud.
We litigated this case. It became obvious to me that Phaedra had filed this lawsuit to try and basically bully Vibe and bully Angela into shutting down the book.
My new book is Dismissed with Prejudice, Phaedra Parks versus Angela Stanton. This book covers the entire case, from the moment that she filed the lawsuit up until the moment that I walked away victoriously. I think it's important for all of us to just take a moment and reflect on those times in our lives when we've been at rock bottom. We all have a story.
2 years later, on June 1st, 2016, Angela Stanton's countersuit was dismissed. Now that might lead you to think, and Phaedra wanted us to think, that this meant she won her lawsuit and proved that Angela was lying. But that's not quite the case. It's clear that negotiations were made to have Angela drop her countersuit, and in return, Phaedra would drop hers. Up until this point in 2016, Phaedra had gone through a lot on camera, but she always tried her best to put on a brave face. Angela Stanton had dropped her book in 2012, 2 years after Phaedra's debut on The Real Housewives. Phaedra would file a lawsuit against her soon after. The very next year in 2013, Apollo had been caught with his hands in the cookie jar once again and would soon be on his way back to prison. In 2014, Apollo would be taken into custody to serve his 8-year prison sentence. With him gone and no longer able to be used as a smokescreen, Phaedra would have to weather the storm that was coming next, all by herself. Up next, we cover the downfall of Phaedra Parks and the end of her friendship with Kandi.
You know, the grave you dig for me, you better dig a double one because you'll fall in it first.